The burn patients came in one after another, their skin blistered and charred. But when Dr. Hayes saw the same strange symbol seared into every body, he realized this was no ordinary fire. The burn unit was rarely still. Even at night, the air carried the steady hum of machines, the hiss of oxygen, and the muffled cries of patients. Dr. Jonathan Hayes, in his early 40s, had lived in this noise long enough to convince himself it no longer unsettled him. He was known for his calm precision, a man colleagues trusted when survival seemed impossible. Yet tonight, his hands trembled. The first patient had arrived shortly after midnight, a young woman pulled from the wreckage of her home. Her skin was blackened, unrecognizable, but Hayes's focus froze on her forearm. Beneath charred flesh, a mark stood out, a perfect circle fractured by jagged lines, its edges too deliberate to be natural. Coincidence, he thought. Fires left patterns. But when the second patient arrived, from the opposite side of the city, Hayes's heart faltered. The same mark glowed on his chest. And then came the third, a child, barely 10, screaming as nurses carried her in. Across her shoulder lay the identical brand. By dawn, 5 patients lay in the unit, each scarred by fire, each carrying the same impossible seal. Hayes should have been consumed by protocols, rounds, graft preparations. Instead, he found himself stealing glances at the marks, which seemed almost alive, edges darkening, spreading outward, long after burns should have stabilized. Nurse Ramirez, pale and shaken, handed him a chart. "Doctor, they all have it. Every one of them." Hayes stared at her, unable to answer. Hours later, he leaned against the cold hallway tiles, fatigue gnawing at him. He had seen explosions, chemical burns, victims pulled from rubble. But never this. Never identical brands carved across bodies like signatures. From the far end of the corridor came the hospital chaplain, summoned by whispers among the staff. He carried a small leather-bound book, his face heavy with unease. Opening it, he turned to a yellowed page. Hayes's stomach clenched. The same circle stared up at him, drawn in fading ink centuries earlier. "They called it the Seal of Ash," the chaplain murmured. "Wherever it appears, fire follows." Hayes looked back toward the groaning patients. Beneath the monitor's steady beeps, he swore he heard something else, the faint crackle of flames, though no fire burned. For the first time, Jonathan Hayes felt medicine slipping from his hands, and with it, the certainty that he could still save anyone in this ward. By morning, the burn unit felt less like a ward and more like a silent tomb. The patients writhed weakly, their skin blistered, but none responded as expected. Protocols were followed: cooling therapy, graft preparations, fluids, but the wounds resisted healing. The brands seemed to repel every treatment, their edges blackening, creeping outward as though alive. Nurse Ramirez approached with trembling hands. "Doctor, their vitals, they're wrong." Hayes frowned and checked the monitor of the little girl. Her body should have been in shock, but her heart rate was steady, too steady. Oxygen, blood pressure, every number was flawless, mechanical, as if the child's body no longer obeyed natural law. Then her eyes opened, not wide with fear, but calm, eerily calm. Her cracked lips whispered, "It's coming for you too." Hayes dropped his stethoscope. "What did you say?" Her eyes closed again, breath falling into perfect rhythm. Ramirez gasped. She hasn't spoken once since she arrived. Hayes wanted to dismiss it as delirium, but when he glanced around the room, horror rooted him. Every patient's lips moved faintly, whispering words too soft to hear, their voices tangled together like a broken lullaby. That night, drained and desperate, Hayes collapsed in his office. The charts told the same story: identical marks, identical decline. A puzzle with no solution. The chaplain appeared again, placing his book on the desk. Another page, another image, this time a human figure engulfed in fire, the seal carved deep into its chest. Beneath it, Latin text scrawled like a warning. "I've seen this before," the chaplain whispered. "Every record ends the same. It begins with the burned and ends with the living." Hayes slammed the book shut. "You expect me to believe in curses? These are medical cases, not prophecies." But when he looked at his own hand in the dim light, he froze. For a fleeting second, he thought he saw the faint outline of the seal, jagged lines glowing beneath his skin. He blinked hard, and it was gone. The intercom cracked alive. Ramirez's panicked voice screamed, "Dr. Hayes, room for the flames." Hayes sprinted down the hall, the chaplain close behind. Inside, a patient's bed was engulfed, not by ordinary fire, but by black flames that gave no heat, no smoke. The mark on the man's chest glowed, molten and alive, as he thrashed in agony. Nurses sprayed extinguishers, but the fire clung, immune to water or gas. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, the flames vanished. The man lay still. The monitor flatlined. Hayes staggered back, his chest tight. That wasn't fire. The chaplain's voice was barely a whisper. No, that was only the beginning. The flat line from room 4 still rang in Hayes's ears as the stench of ash clung to his clothes. "Call the morgue," he said hoarsely, "and keep it off the log cardiac arrest." "Doctor," Ramirez began. "Do it," he snapped, hating the fear in his own voice. He needed time to think, to name what he'd seen with something other than superstition. Back in his office, the charts looked like copies of the same nightmare. 5 patients from different neighborhoods, identical burns, identical brand, identical drift toward a place medicine couldn't follow. He rubbed at his eyes until sparks danced in the dark. 1 patient dead, 4 teetering, and a symbol that felt less like a wound and more like a verdict. A knock. Ramirez slipped inside, shutting the door with her shoulder. "You should see the girl," she whispered. In bed 3, the child lay still, eyes half-lidded, lips moving. Hayes leaned close, expecting nonsense. Instead, he caught the words, dry and precise, as if read from memory. "Circle of fire, circle of ash, circle of flesh." His skin crawled. What does that mean? The girl didn't answer. Her breath fell into that unnatural metronome again. "She hasn't spoken since admission," Ramirez murmured. "Her parents said she was never even around church." Hayes stepped back, scanning the room. The man in bed 1 moved his lips. So did the woman in bed 5. Each voice was too faint to separate, but together they braided into a thread of sound that seemed to hum inside the walls. A choir of ash, he thought, and hated himself for the phrase. He fled to the scrub sink, scrubbing until his hands burned. The steel reflection threw back a stranger, drawn, gray, eyes rimmed in red. As he turned his wrist under the light, something flickered beneath the wet skin-thin lines, curving into a circle, jagged strokes crossing it like fractures in glass. He blinked hard. The sink hissed. The lines faded, then reappeared, faint but undeniable, as if lit from underneath. Stress, he told himself. Sleep, hallucination. But the skin felt warm where the outline lay, and a slow throb began there, answering the distant hum of voices. The 6th patient arrived near midnight, a middle-aged man with blistered arms and a stare fixed on nothing. Even before Hayes drew back the sheet, he knew what he would find. The seal, bright against ruined flesh. The man's lips moved, and this time the words were not a whisper, but a thread of breath that filled the room. Circle of fire, circle of ash, circle of flesh. Hayes turned and realized all 6 beds were speaking now. Not loud, not soft, simply inevitable. Their chests rose and fell together. Their eyes, when they opened, were too calm. The chaplain appeared in the doorway, book clutched to his chest. He looked older than he had that morning. "Dr. Hayes," he said gently, "you must leave this place." Hayes rounded on him. "People are dying and you're telling me to walk away?" "I'm telling you it has chosen," the chaplain said, gaze dropping to Hayes's wrist. "The seal does not burn the body. It brands the soul. Once it spreads far enough," he hesitated, "there is no cutting it out." Heat pulsed beneath Hayes's skin as if answering to a name. He stepped back, hiding his hand in his pocket, but the throbbing climbed higher, a slow, deliberate rhythm that had nothing to do with his heart. In the corridor, the hum became words, low and ruined, shaped around his name. Hayes. No one stood there. Only the flicker of fluorescent lights and the steady beep of machines. Science had always been his language for terror. Name it, treat it, chart it. Tonight the names slid off like water. Behind the numbers, something watched. Behind the burns, something called. And under his skin, the circle brightened patient, certain, waiting for him to admit what it already knew. He wasn't just treating the fire anymore. It was learning the shape of him. Sleep abandoned Hayes. Every time he closed his eyes, the whispers pressed closer, no longer faint, but threading directly into his thoughts. Circle of fire, circle of ash, circle of flesh. The chant throbbed like a second heartbeat. When he returned to the ward, the sound no longer came only from the beds. It lingered in the halls, in the stairwell, in the dead space between monitors. Sometimes it carried his name. Hayes. He froze in an empty corridor. The word dragged like coal, scraped across iron. He turned, but nothing waited there, only shadows trembling under fluorescent buzz. By dawn, the staff could no longer hide their unease. Ramirez confronted him by the station, her voice low but steady. "Doctor, they're afraid. Not of the patients of you. With me?" His reflection in the glass doors betrayed the truth. His skin was pale, his eyes red-rimmed, and from beneath his sleeve, the faint glow of the seal crawled higher toward his elbow. "Look at yourself," she whispered. "You're not well." Before Hayes could answer, Bed 2 erupted. A patient convulsed, the brand on his chest blazing. Nurses rushed forward, but black fire consumed him in silence. No smoke, no heat, just dread. When it vanished, the man was gone. The sheets bore only a smoldering circle where his body had been. The unit collapsed into chaos. A young nurse screamed that they were cursed, that Hayes had brought this on them. No one contradicted her. Fear had curdled into suspicion. Later, alone, Hayes unwrapped his bandage. The seal glowed clearly now, lines sharp and pulsing. He pressed trembling fingers against it. The heat was not pain but rhythm, a beat too steady to be his own. The chaplain entered without knocking, eyes falling instantly to Hayes's arm. "It's spreading." Hayes snapped the sleeve down. "Then tell me how to stop it." The old man shook his head. "You must first understand what it wants." The words coiled in Hayes's mind long after the chaplain left. What did it want? The answer seemed to whisper back from the darkness, growing louder each time. "You." That night, the patients stirred. One by one their eyes opened, glowing faintly, their lips moving together in flawless rhythm. Hayes stood frozen as the chant rose, shaking the walls. Circle of fire, circle of ash, circle of flesh. The seal on his arm burned in answer, and for the first time he felt less like a doctor among the sick, and more like the center of the ward itself, its pulse, its vessel, its flame. By the next morning, the burn unit had become a place no one wanted to enter. Nurses whispered about screams in the night, about shadows moving behind curtains when the rooms were empty. 2 refused their shifts outright. Another crossed herself before stepping through the doors. Even the janitor avoided the ward, muttering prayers under his breath. Hayes noticed the fear, but said nothing. His strength was dwindling. The seal had climbed past his elbow now, pulsing beneath his skin like molten veins. He wore long sleeves, gloves, anything to disguise it, yet the staff saw through him. Their eyes no longer held trust-only suspicion. When the second patient died that afternoon, the fragile order shattered. The black fire erupted without warning, swallowing the bed and vanishing in seconds, leaving nothing but a glowing circle etched into the mattress. Nurses screamed, some running into the corridor. Ramirez tried to calm them, but her words fell flat. "He's cursed," a young nurse cried, pointing at Hayes. "Don't you see? Wherever he goes, the fire follows." Their silence afterward was worse than shouting. Not one defended him. Hayes felt the ground tilt beneath him once. He had been their anchor in chaos. Now he was the storm. That night, alone in his office, he unwrapped his arm again. The seal glowed fiercely, alive beneath his skin. He pressed against it, and heat throbbed outward, not painful, but intoxicating. A thought flickered. What if the chaplain was right? What if this couldn't be treated, only accepted? The whispers swelled, filling the empty room. This time they were not chanting, but screaming, hundreds of voices shrieking, pleading. Hayes staggered to the sink, splashing water on his face. In the glass, he saw a stranger. Veins lit like cracks in burning stone, pupils glowing faintly orange. His breath caught. For a moment, the reflection lingered, even when he turned away. Then came a cry from the general ward. Not the burn unit outside it. Hayes froze. Patients beyond his floor. He rushed into the hall, finding staff clustered in terror as a new victim stumbled forward, his gown charred, the seal blazing across his chest. He collapsed, convulsing. The black fire burst upward, roaring silently, ignoring sprinklers as they poured water across the tiles. Within seconds, the body was gone. Only a scorched circle marked where he had fallen. The staff stared at Hayes, dripping, terrified. Their gazes fell to his sleeve. They didn't need to speak aloud. The truth was written in their faces. The fire wasn't just in the patients anymore. It was spreading, and he was its carrier. The administrators arrived that morning, their polished shoes clicking down the corridor as though confidence alone could tame the ward. 4 of them, 3 men in suits, and a woman with a clipboard, stood stiff at the nurse's station, their eyes sharp with suspicion. "Dr. Hayes," the woman said, her tone clipped, "we've received disturbing reports. Patients disappearing, staff refusing shifts, and your behavior erratic." Hayes steadied his voice. "These are cases we don't yet understand. Removing me won't change the outcome." One man adjusted his glasses. "What we do understand is that patients are dying, vanishing, and your staff believe you are the cause. If you can't provide answers, you'll be removed." Removed. The word hit harder than he expected. This was his battlefield as ward. Without him, the fire would run wild. "I'm the only one who knows how to treat them," he insisted. "Take me out and more will die." The woman's reply was cold. "More already are." Before he could answer, a scream tore down the hall. A patient stumbled into view, not from the burn unit, but the general ward. His gown was scorched, his chest glowing with the seal. He collapsed at their feet, convulsing. Then the black fire burst forth. Administrators reeled back as flames swallowed the man, rising like a wave. Sprinklers hissed, but the fire ignored the deluge. Within seconds, the body vanished. Only a smoldering circle remained on the floor. The administrators froze, soaked and pale. One muttered, "God help us," before bolting for the elevators. The rest followed, their authority collapsing as swiftly as the patient had burned. Hayes stood trembling in the empty hall. Ramirez hovered nearby, her face drained of color. "They saw it?" he whispered. Now they know. But knowledge would not stop it. That night, Hayes locked himself in his office, the chaplain's ancient book spread open before him. His hands shook as he traced frantic lines of Latin, drawings of bodies branded by the seal, towns reduced to ash. Every record ended the same way. Once the mark spread beyond the healer, the fire consumed everything. He pressed his forehead to the desk, chest heaving. If I am the vessel, then this hospital is already lost. The whisper stirred in answer, no longer soft but commanding, wrapping tight around his mind. Join the circle, Hayes. Burn with us. By the 12th day, the burn unit was split in two. Hayes, pale and trembling, clinging to medicine like a shield, and everyone else, who watched him as though he were already lost. The whispers never left him now. They threaded through every sound, louder than heart monitors, louder than footsteps. Sometimes they even finished his thoughts. He tried to hide it, but the staff saw the truth. Their doctor was unraveling. Ramirez entered his office that morning, shutting the door softly. Her eyes carried exhaustion and sorrow. Doctor, they want you gone. Hayes stiffened. Who? All of them. The nurses, the residents, even the orderlies. They say you're the cause. That if you leave, the fire might stop. He shot to his feet, chair scraping back. I've given 15 years to this ward. Do they really think I brought this on us? Her silence was worse than an answer. A commotion rose outside. Hayes and Ramirez rushed into the hall. Her staff had gathered near the ward doors. Henderson, her hands trembling, pointed straight at him. It's him. Can't you see? Wherever he goes, the fire follows. Look at his arm. Hayes instinctively tugged at his sleeve, but the damp bandage betrayed him, a faint glow leaking through. Gasps rippled through the group. He's infected. He's cursed. He's not human anymore. The word struck harder than any wound. Hayes raised his hands. Listen to me. If I leave, the fire spreads unchecked. You need me. But their eyes no longer saw a physician. They saw a monster. The chaplain stepped forward, clutching his book. They are right to fear. The seal consumes its vessel. And if you resist the truth, you'll bring ruin to them all. Hayes turned on him, voice raw. Then tell me how to stop it. The old man's silence stretched too long. Finally, he said, stopping it requires sacrifice. Before Hayes could demand more, alarms shrieked from room 2. He ran, the staff scattering. Inside, a patient convulsed, the seal burning brighter than ever. Black fire exploded outward, spilling across the bed and crawling up the walls. Hayes grabbed an extinguisher, fighting instinctively, though he knew it was useless. Ramirez screamed his name, pulling him back as the flames surged. For an instant, the fire shaped itself into something human arms, a face, a mouth whispering his name. Then it was gone. The bed lay empty, the air thick with ash. When Hayes turned back, the staff stared at him as though he had been the one consumed. Hayes locked his office door, his breath ragged, hands trembling. The whispers hadn't stopped since room 2 erupted. They hissed his name in unison, a chorus that pressed against his skull. He tore the bandages from his arm. The seal glowed vividly now, its jagged lines stretching up toward his shoulder. It pulsed like something alive. Each throb sent heat crawling through his veins. Cut it out, a voice inside whispered. You're a doctor. You know how. His eyes fell to the tray of instruments on the desk: scalpel, forceps, sutures. Tools that had saved countless lives. Tonight they looked like weapons turned against himself. He laid his arm flat. This is just tissue, he muttered. Tissue can be removed. The first cut was shallow. Pain flared, but the seal did not blur. He pressed harder, slicing deeper. Blood spilled across the desk, but the glowing lines remained, carved deeper than flesh. Worse, the glow seemed to spread with every stroke, feeding on the blood. His vision swam. Still he cut, frantic, whispering through clenched teeth. "Come out. Come out." The door burst open. Ramirez rushed in, the chaplain behind her. "Doctor, stop!" she cried. Hayes jerked his arm away, wild-eyed. "I have to. Don't you see? If I cut it out, I can stop it." Blood poured down his arm, dripping onto the floor. The chaplain seized his wrist, forcing the scalpel free. "You cannot fight it this way. It isn't in your flesh, it is in you." Hayes sagged against the desk, sobbing with rage. "Then what am I supposed to do? Watch it spread until there's nothing left?" Ramirez pressed bandages to the wound, her hands slick with his blood. Her voice shook. "You're killing yourself." The seal burned brighter beneath the torn skin, mocking every attempt. Hayes stared at it, despair hollowing his chest. His own tools, his own training useless. The chaplain's voice was low, final. "There is one way, but it requires more than steel. It requires surrender." Hayes' gaze snapped up. Surrender to what? The old man held his stare, to the fire itself. The whispers inside Hayes rose in triumph, pressing at the last corners of his sanity. He didn't know if the chaplain meant surrender to destroy it or to become it. And for the first time, he wasn't sure which outcome he feared more. The next day began in silence. Not the ordinary hush of early shifts, but a silence so heavy it pressed against the walls. When Hayes opened his office door, the nurse's station stood deserted. The antiseptic smell lingered, but underneath it, a faint scent of ash. Around the corner, hushed voices stopped him cold. "We can't keep working under him. He's infected. Every patient he touches dies." "Did you see his arm? That glow, he's not even human anymore." Hayes' stomach turned. These weren't rumors anymore. They were convictions. When he stepped into view, the group froze. No one met his eyes. Henderson, trembling but resolute, finally spoke. "Dr. Hayes, for the safety of this hospital, we can't let you stay here." His pulse spiked. "You don't understand. If I leave, the fire spreads unchecked. I'm the only one holding it back." Another nurse shook her head. "You're not holding it back. You're feeding it." The words sliced deeper than any scalpel. Hayes staggered a step, his voice cracking. "I've given my life to this ward, to all of you, and now you turn on me?" Ramirez appeared at the back of the group, her eyes glistening. She didn't defend him. She didn't deny their claims. Her silence was a wound all its own. The chaplain stepped forward, his book pressed to his chest. "They are right to fear you, Doctor. The seal has chosen its vessel. If you remain, more will burn." Hayes' throat tightened. "So what? You want me to just walk away? Leave while this consumes the city?" The chaplain's reply was heavy. "Sometimes, to save others, you must sacrifice yourself." The staff began to edge closer, slow and careful, as though surrounding a dangerous animal. Hayes backed away, sweat slick on his skin, his mind unraveling. The whispers inside him swelled, louder than ever. "Burn with us. Join the circle." Hayes pressed against the wall, eyes darting from face to face. They weren't colleagues anymore. They were strangers, united by fear, ready to cast him out. And beneath his skin, the seal pulsed harder, as if delighted by their betrayal. They advanced carefully, as though he were already contagious. Hayes pressed himself against the wall, chest heaving. Every face belonged to someone he had worked beside for years. Nurses he'd trained, residents he'd mentored. Now their eyes saw only danger. Henderson stepped forward, holding a syringe that trembled in her grip. "Doctor, please, don't fight us. Just let us sedate you until administration decides what to do." Hayes gave a ragged laugh. "Sedate me? You think this?" He ripped the sleeve from his arm. The seal blazed up to his shoulder, jagged lines glowing like molten veins. "You think this is something a sedative will fix?" Gasps rippled through the hall. One nurse crossed herself. Another dropped the restraints in his hands. Ramirez's face crumpled. "Jonathan," her voice broke. "It's taken too much of you already." Hayes shook his head violently. "No, I'm still me. I can fight it. I have to." But his body betrayed him. Heat surged through his chest. His heart hammered until it felt like it might burst. He doubled over, screaming, the seal flaring so bright it filled the corridor with light. The staff screamed. Some fled down the hall. Others pressed against the far wall, eyes wide with terror. Hayes staggered upright, catching his reflection in the ward's glass panel. The man staring back was no longer entirely human. Veins burned like embered cracks. Pupils glowed faintly orange. Lips moved in words he hadn't spoken aloud. Circle of fire, circle of ash, circle of flesh. Two orderlies lunged with restraints. Hayes jerked away, and black fire burst from his skin. It lashed across the wall, searing a perfect circle into the paint. The men fell back, horrified. Hayes collapsed to his knees, clutching his head, caught between his own scream and the whispers inside. The chaplain's voice rose above the chaos. "This is not his body anymore. The seal has claimed its vessel." "No," Hayes roared, fighting to form words. His eyes locked on Ramirez, her tear-streaked face desperate with fear and loyalty. "Don't let them take me." But even as he begged, he felt the fire rising, no longer content with skin and bone. It was ready to break free through him, into everyone around him. The corridor had become a battlefield. Nurses pressed against the walls, some fleeing, others frozen in terror. Hayes knelt in the center, his body trembling as the seal blazed across his chest and arm. The whispers inside him had grown into a roar. "Burn Hayes, join us. You are the circle." Two orderlies tried again, reaching for his arms. Hayes raised a hand, desperate to push them away, and the black fire erupted like liquid shadow. It wrapped around the men, searing glowing lines into their skin. They screamed, clawing at the marks now etched into their flesh. Smaller, weaker versions of the seal. The others shrieked and scattered, horror twisting their faces. Hayes staggered upright, staring at what he had done. No, that wasn't me. But the truth throbbed in his veins. The fire was his now. The chaplain lifted his book like a weapon. "It has awakened fully in you. You are no longer healer, Jonathan Hayes. You are vessel." Hayes caught his reflection in the polished floor, veins glowing, eyes lit with faint fire. His lips moved without command, whispering the chant with the others. He clutched his head, fighting to silence it. "Jonathan!" Ramirez broke from the chaos, rushing to him. She dropped to her knees before him, ignoring the chaplain's warning hand. Her face was inches from his, fierce despite her tears. "You're still in there. I know you are. Don't let it take you." For a moment, the fire faltered. Hayes saw her clearly loyal, brave Ramirez, the one who had stayed when everyone else turned. His lips parted. I don't know how much longer I can." The lights overhead flickered violently. Every patient in the ward sat bolt upright, eyes glowing, their voices uniting into one thunderous chant. Circle of fire, circle of ash, circle of flesh. The words shook the walls. The seal on Hayes's chest blazed white-hot, answering their chorus. His scream merged with theirs until it no longer sounded human. The chaplain fell to his knees, clutching his book. "It has begun." Hayes staggered back, the fire inside him no longer asking but commanding. It wasn't just consuming him, it was reaching outward, hungry for everything it touched. The burn unit was no longer a ward, it was a crucible. The air vibrated with the chant, lights flickered, Shadows writhed like living things. Nurses fled, some crashing through glass panels just to escape. Alarms wailed, but no code could describe what was happening. Hayes staggered against the wall, clutching his chest. The seal glowed through his shirt like molten iron, every pulse tearing at his sanity. His voice cracked. "Stop. Stop this." But the patients only grew louder, their broken bodies trembling with unnatural strength. Their glowing eyes fixed on him, as though he were both their master and their sacrifice. Ramirez clung to his arm, refusing to let go. "Jonathan, listen to me. You are a doctor. You save people, that's who you are. Hold on to that." Her voice cut through the roar for a moment. Hayes's breathing slowed. I don't want to be this. I want it out." At the far end of the hall, the chaplain stood firm, his ancient book raised. "It cannot be taken out," he said. "It can only be contained or released." The words curdled Hayes's stomach. Contained how? The chaplain's silence was answer enough. Sacrifice. Around them, the hospital shook. Administrators stormed in, demanding control, only to freeze when they saw the glowing-eyed patients chanting in unison. The seal began etching itself into the very floor beneath their feet, jagged lines glowing like lava through tile. "Evacuate the hospital!" One administrator screamed into his radio. "Now!" Hayes's chest heaved. He could feel the seal pulling, not just inside the ward, but beyond, reaching for streets, buildings, the whole city. Ramirez's hands cupped his face, her tears streaking down his cheeks. "Jonathan, please, fight it. Don't let it take you." The seal surged harder, brighter, as if mocking her words. Hayes fell to his knees, his scream tearing through the hall as the floor cracked beneath him. For the first time, he realized the fire wasn't waiting to spread. It was already here. The burn unit roared like a furnace. Black fire clawed at the ceiling. Alarms sputtered out, and the chant of the patients thundered like an earthquake. The seal on Hayes's chest blazed brighter than any light in the ward, jagged lines now crawling up his neck toward his jaw. Ramirez gripped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. "Jonathan, you're still here. Don't let it take you." His vision swam. Through the haze he saw her, not fear, but defiance. She believed in him when no one else did. For a heartbeat, the fire faltered. I want it out," he whispered. The chaplain rushed forward, spreading salt in a circle around Hayes. His voice cracked as he chanted in Latin, each word tearing through the noise. "Containment," he shouted. "The seal cannot be destroyed, but it can be bound if he holds it long enough." Hayes staggered, clutching his chest. The fire screamed inside him. "Tear the circle apart. Burn them all. You are the flame." The salt glowed faintly, forming a barrier around him. The black fire struck against it, sparks erupting. The patients wailed in unison, their eyes blazing, their voices rising into a furious howl. Hayes slammed his fists against the floor, fighting to hold himself inside the circle. "I can't," he gasped. "It's too strong." "Yes, you can," Ramirez cried, pressing her forehead to his. "You've held dying men together with nothing but your hands. You can hold this." The chaplain's chanting rose higher, his hands shaking as he traced the final symbol. For a breathless moment, the seal's glow dimmed. The patients collapsed back against their beds, their chanting breaking into ragged gasps. But then Hayes convulsed, the seal pulsing brighter than ever. The salt circle cracked, shards of light flying upward. The black fire surged, clawing at the barrier. The chaplain staggered, nearly dropping his book. "It's too strong," he shouted. "If we fail, it will consume in all of us." Hayes's scream rose above everything, a sound torn between his own voice and something far older. And as the fire lashed against the circle, the choice pressed closer. Resist until he broke, or surrender to end it all. The ward burned with silence and flame. Black fire writhed along the ceiling, straining against the circle the chaplain had drawn. The salt barrier cracked in places, light spilling upward like molten glass. Hayes knelt inside, body convulsing as the seal surged across his chest and throat. Ramirez held his shoulders, tears streaking down her face. "Jonathan, listen to me. You're still in control. Hold it, please." His breath came in ragged bursts. I don't know if there's anything left to hold." His voice was laced with something not his own, deeper, guttural. The chaplain's chanting grew louder, but his strength faltered. "Dr. Hayes' sacrifice is the only way. If you give yourself fully, the seal will collapse back into the ash. But you must not resist its destruction." Hayes stared at him, horror carving into his face. "You're asking me to die." "I'm asking you to choose," the chaplain said, voice breaking. "Either your life or every life outside these walls." The seal pulsed violently, forcing Hayes's body upright. Black fire spilled from his fingertips, clawing at the barrier. Through the smoke, visions tore across his mind streets in flames, buildings reduced to cinders, people screaming as fire devoured them. Always at the center, he saw himself, broken, inhuman, glowing with the mark. Ramirez clung to him, her voice fierce despite her sobs. "Jonathan, don't leave me. Please, we can find another way. There has to be." The whispers shrieked inside him, furious at her words. "She lies. There is no other way. We will live through you. You are the circle." Hayes collapsed to his knees, pressing bloody palms against the floor. "I don't want to die," he sobbed. Ramirez pulled him close, forehead to forehead. "Then live for me. Fight it." The chaplain's voice thundered in reply. "If you live, the world burns." The salt circle shattered, shards of light scattering into smoke. The seal blazed brighter than ever, its jagged lines spreading like fire across Hayes's entire body. The patients sat upright again, their glowing eyes fixed on him, their voices merging into a final deafening roar. "Circle of fire, circle of ash, circle of flesh." Hayes screamed, torn between the woman begging him to hold on and the voices demanding he surrender. The choice was no longer coming. It was here. The chant shook the ward like an earthquake, windows rattling, lights bursting in showers of sparks. Hayes crouched at the center of the broken circle, his body glowing with jagged lines of fire. The seal had claimed nearly every inch of him, crawling up his throat, pulsing like a second skeleton beneath his skin. Ramirez gripped him desperately, her tears hot against his face. "Jonathan, don't leave me. Stay, please." His voice was steady now, though the roar inside him was deafening. "If I stay, the world burns." Visions crashed against his mind streets devoured in black fire, hospitals collapsing, whole cities turned to ash. And always his own reflection at the center, eyes glowing, body consumed. The chaplain's voice rose above the chaos, hoarse but commanding. "Dr. Hayes, the seal must be bound through you. Give yourself fully. Do not resist, and it will die with you." The patients wailed in unison, their voices not their own, but the echo of the fire itself. "You are the circle. Live, and we live through you." Hayes's body shook violently, the choice tearing at him. He looked at Ramirez one last time, memorizing her face, the only thing that had kept him tethered to humanity. His voice broke. "Save them, even if you can't save me." Before she could answer, he pressed both palms flat to the floor. The seal blazed white-hot, a scream ripping from his chest that was part human, part fire. The black flames surged upward, swallowing him whole, and then silence. The patients collapsed back against their beds, their glowing eyes extinguished. The cracks in the floor sealed, the smoke dissolved. Alarms flickered weakly, returning to their ordinary rhythm. Where Jonathan Hayes had knelt, nothing remained but a scatter of ash. Ramirez fell to her knees, sobbing into the emptiness. The chaplain closed his book with trembling hands, whispering, "The seal is contained, for now." But as the silence deepened, Ramirez thought she heard it faint as breath, rising from the ash. Circle of fire, circle of ash, circle of flesh,